It's Thursday and we are in chapter 19 of Luke, and we have reached the story of Zacchaeus. I literally cannot read this story without having the song in my head. You know, Zacchaeus was a very little man. I shall not subject you to the whole of my childhood Sunday school singing. Suffice to say, it makes me happy when I read this. But I think to understand the significance of this story, I mean, it's probably a story that we've all heard in childhood, or, you know, it's a familiar Sunday school story, isn't it? Zacchaeus, he's a very little man and he climbs up a tree to see Jesus. He's excited to see Jesus. And somehow Jesus decides, he calls out to him and says, "Quick, come down. I'm going to be a guest at your house today. I'm coming to your house for tea." So he climbs down, takes Jesus to his house. He's really excited about it. And yet the people around are really grumbling. They're really unhappy about it. Those onlookers are really pretty hacked off. But actually, Zacchaeus, he is made up, and he actually says to Jesus, "I will give half my wealth to the poor, and if I've cheated people on their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much." And Jesus responds to him and said, "Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost." And so it's easy to see at face value what's happening. Jesus has invited someone in who wasn't very popular and has told him he's forgiven. But I think really to understand the full significance of it, you need to understand exactly how much of a traitor Zacchaeus was considered to be. You know, the role of tax collectors in that time was really to finance the Roman Empire. The Romans had come in, they were taking over whole nations, and in order to keep financing that, they were taxing the nations that they were overtaking. And then they were using people from those nations as traitors against their own fellow countrymen. So the Jews were really unhappy about paying these taxes because it was going to fund, you know, a people who were worshipping pagan gods, who were living this really immoral lifestyle. Romans were very immoral. And then one of their people, one of their countrymen, was working for them, not only taking their money, but also cheating them out of other finances and making themselves very rich out of it. And obviously from their response, it sounds like Zacchaeus was one of the worst for that. He was pretty bad. He was taking a lot more than the Romans were asking and pocketing the difference. So you can understand that people were pretty unhappy about that. And yet Jesus, also a Jew, with every reason to feel as unhappy and as aggrieved as all the others who were watching, yet he loves Zacchaeus and he seeks him out. And I think what's interesting is, and I didn't know this until I reread it this time, is how much of an insult it must have been, or how much of an affront it must have been to the Jews who were listening on when Jesus refers to Zacchaeus as a true son of Abraham, because they wouldn't have wanted to acknowledge that this unpopular tax collector could kind of somehow be aligned with them because he was a son of Abraham. That would not have been a popular idea. And they wouldn't also have wanted to admit that a son of Abraham could be lost, because that doesn't fit with their ideology either. That didn't fit with the programme. Like, they were all, because of their lineage, okay. But actually, not only is he saying he's a son of Abraham, but he's a son of Abraham who was lost. Which kind of is a throwback. Like, there's this real thread all the way through the stories that Luke's telling, isn't there? Of, you know, rebuffing any thought that anyone might have of their ability to be saved through any thing of their own doing. There's nothing about someone's heritage that can secure them salvation. You know, you can't be saved or condemned on the basis of your heritage, whether you've got a good heritage or a bad one. That's not the deciding factor. Regardless of your background, regardless of your way of life, essentially Jesus is saying here, it doesn't matter what you've done, who you are, how great you think you are, how much wealth you have, how many rules you've kept, none of this is going to save you. None of this is going to get you where you need to be. Through faith, the lost can be forgiven and made new, which is a relief, frankly. It's an absolute relief. And I think the other thing that I really took from this as I reread it again was thinking how immediate and how wholehearted Zacchaeus' response is to Jesus. Like there's this really big outward display of what's happened on the inside. I mean, the moment when things change for Zacchaeus is when he gets called down, isn't it? That's going to be the moment when the heart change happened. It's Jesus saw him. Jesus spotted him. He saw him. He loved him. Jesus' actions displayed love for him. And that, I reckon, created a real heart change in that moment for Zacchaeus. That all happened under the surface. But the outworking of that, he could have just had a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, enjoyed having Jesus today, and that'd be the end of it. But actually what we see is an outworking of what's happened on the inside with his display and saying, you know, like, I'm going to give this money back to the poor, and if I've cheated anyone, like something happens in his life to show the difference that Jesus has made. So yeah, I think it's always good and a good sign if there's a big difference, if there's something that shifts and changes in our lives as a result of meeting with Jesus. It should really, we should look different as a result. People should be a bit wowed by the things that change in us because we've been in Jesus' presence. So yeah, there's your lessons from Zacchaeus today, and I'm going to go away happily humming to myself that little tune all day. It's like an earworm. I won't be able to get rid of it. See you tomorrow.